What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and we're giving you another updated 2-round NFL mock draft post-Deshaun Watson trade. We'll talk about my thoughts on that deal in just a little bit. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, join me for a conversation down below. I told you last video I did was another mock draft. I'm going to be pumping these out a lot more. So give me your takeaways. If your favorite team, maybe I gave you a couple picks you didn't like, let me know down in the comments section what players you think better fits or better values. Love to have your thoughts. Let's talk about this fun time of the year inside the National Football League. So, of course, Friday's video was post Davante Adams. Today, it's post Deshaun Watson trade. So I'll hit on this a little bit. It felt like the Texans didn't get quite as much as we initially anticipated because, you know, when this all began, a little over a year ago, you know, the asking price was 3 1s, 2 to 3 2s, a player on defense or two. And I was like, yeah, they can probably get that. Then you obviously have the off-field issues come to arise for Deshaun Watson, and that kind of bakes in part of my problem with this for the Browns off the field wise. But for Cleveland, you got a good deal because you did not have to give up a second-round pick. And at this point, you need to adopt the Rams strategy, in my opinion. Every second rounder you have, trade back, turn it into a late 2, maybe a 3, depending on where you are, and try to reacquire some of those mid-round draft picks that you didn't have to give up on this, but because you don't have a 1, try to make up for it with where you lost some quality, gain some quantity, and just try to do basically what the Rams have done leading up to the Super Bowl they did this past year. But that's a huge win for Cleveland because you get Deshaun Watson, but also even if you don't trade back, you're getting second-round picks to find a potential starter on the outside at corner or at wide receiver, find an edge, find a nose tackle or whatever. Whatever the need may be over the next couple of years, they have some early enough picks to be able to plug away at some of those holes. For Houston, it's not great because, like I said, it wasn't the best value that I could have anticipated them landing. Especially compare that to what Miami seemingly was willing to give up a year and a half ago, midway through the season. Felt like there was some meat left on the bone there for the Texans. But nonetheless, the saga is done. I am happy to have it done. I'm tired of talking about it and waiting for him to make a move. So that's just me. I can only imagine what a Houston Texans fan feels like right now. And, it's still 3 1s and a couple of, mid-round picks in the future. And really the exciting part about this for Houston is what does a Nick Caserio led rebuild look like? Is it built after what, New England has done for years? Is it, taking shape of what Tampa Bay did to get to their Super Bowl, what the Rams did? We don't know. So this is really exciting. I'm going to try to predict some of that in this video. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Actually, one final note on this trade. I think the worst part about this is it did become about money in Cleveland, especially moving on from Baker Mayfield assuredly now. They had the money they could give to Deshaun Watson. And I think the worst part about it is the salary this upcoming year is so small, anticipating him to be suspended. So if he loses pay from those games, it's not hurting him like it would if it was $48 million deal like it is throughout the rest of the contract. So it's a little disingenuous this all came down to money, and it's a little sad that the guy that has 22 civil lawsuits against him, if he gets suspended by the NFL, really won't be hit or hurt from it. Realistically, he should, because what he did was gross. And, that's just not a good look. We're kind of getting there in society where we're growing up and we're holding people to better standards. And meanwhile, Deshaun Watson's about to make nearly $50 million a year. And if he gets suspended this year, it really won't hurt his pocketbook all that much unless they decide to fine him. But let's leave that behind us. Deshaun Watson has finally been traded. Let's jump into this mock draft. Aiden Hutchinson, I won't sit on this one. And because I'm doing these mocks a little bit more frequently, you'll kind of have an idea of where I stand on players. So I'm going to not dive too deep into the weeds throughout these so we can keep a decent pace going forward. And I had a Kim Ekwonu going to Detroit. Still don't know really what the Lions want to do. I'd go Thibodeau, but Kim Ekwonu might be the next best player available in their eyes, especially if you're taking away Thibodeau's attitude issues. Maybe if they don't like that, Kim could be best player available, him or Neal. I think Kim Ekwonu, though, play him at left guard. That's been the weaker part of the offensive line that's already pretty good. And then maybe in 4 years' time, Taylor Decker starts to decline. You can have Kim Ekwonu kick out to play at left tackle. Makes sense timeline-wise, and he's one of the better players available. Feels like a Dan Campbell guy as well. Evan Neal's still going to be the pick here for the Houston Texans. Likely to trade Laramie Tunsil. I would assume if you're going to move on from Watson, you might as well go full rebuild, blow it all up. Brandon Cook's probably on his way out as well. So Neal here makes some sense. I've also seen some Ahmad Sauce Gardner, and I'm absolutely here for Sauce going in the top 3. That would be an intriguing fit, but I'll stick with Neal right now for the pick at 3 for Houston. They'll be back on the clock at 13. Then we get to the Jets. I'm going to stick with Kayvon Thibodeaux. We're seeing a lot of the same, and the first 6 picks, spoiler warning, are the same. So Thibodeaux obviously feels like a good fit for that defense. And, you invest in DJ Reed. You already have Bryce Hall, solid cornerbacks. You add Thibodeaux that pass rush. That feels like a Robert Saleh defense in the making. Charles Cross, I talked about it last video. His strength is his lateral movement, so maybe it makes sense for him to be the guy of this tackle class, especially with the Giants picking at 5, which, by the way, I think my next mock I'm going to do is going to have a trade, Pittsburgh moving up to 5. Give me some other scenarios you would be interested in me exploring, right? How much could a trade break the board, basically? So that's be the next mock draft I do, but give me some other ideas down below. But to continue that point, Cross feels like a guy who might be able to make that switch over to the right side, given his lateral ability and his ability to mirror defenders. So might be the most seamless transition for any of the tackles, really, outside of Evan Neal, who's already played right tackle. For the Carolina Panthers, I'm going to stick with Malik Willis. I'm so not crazy about this. And that's probably part of the reason I want to go and do that Steelers trade video, because, then Willis goes 5, and it's like, okay, what does Carolina want to do next? And it's also perplexing and interesting to consider. If Baker Mayfield, the team he's been most linked to is the Indianapolis Colts, the same can be said about Jimmy Garoppolo. If Baker ends up being the guy in Indy, is Jimmy G, someone that Carolina would want to trade a day 3 or day 2 pick for, maybe a 3rd rounder? I don't know. It could save Matt Rule's job in the short term, but it does feel like a low upside type of play, but it would stabilize the floor for sure. But in this situation, Malik Willis, this is a save my job type of move for Matt Rule, and if it works out, great. I don't think it's a great landing spot for Willis to really hit his prime and be the best that he could be. I'm going to go Jermaine Johnson here, just mixing up a little bit. Went Linderbaum on Friday. I think Jermaine Johnson, of the edge rushers, is probably the best fit for what Don Wink Martindale wants to do, and he'll have those 3-4 outside linebackers dropping into coverage more than your normal 3-4. Jermaine Johnson, given his versatility to play 3-4-4-3, is a solid mover in space. Maybe he's the best fit here, especially comparing him to Travon Walker, where Johnson has some scheme versatility, 4-3-3-4. Walker's versatility really comes from he can play on the edge. He can also kick inside to be an interior rusher. Not so much how well he moves in space. Unbelievable athlete. I just don't know about him having to cover a flat or trying to pick up a running back on a swing route out of the backfield. So feel a little bit better about Johnson in that setting, and that's kind of what Wink would ask him to do. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons, and I am going to do something a little different here. Especially with the suspension of Calvin Ridley, he could certainly be a guy on the move. It'll be interesting to see if the league reduces that suspension at all. Maybe it's just an 8 to 10 game suspension. It feels like it's going to be year long, at least as of right now. But Garrett Wilson, that's your replacement right there. And, you brought back Cordero Patterson. You have Kyle Pitts. You're at least, if they do decide to hold on to Matt Ryan, some rumors still flying that he could be on the move. If they decide to hold on to Matt Ryan, you're at least giving him something to work with, right? So Wilson feels like a 1-to-1 comparison to Ridley. I don't think a lot of people have made that comp. So considering you're at least going this year without Ridley, I think it makes some sense. And you know what? Push comes to shove. If Ridley doesn't want to be traded out of Atlanta or decides to re-sign, whatever the case may be, and then Atlanta needs a new quarterback post-Matt Ryan era, Ridley will come back, and you have him, Wilson, Kyle Pitts. That was an awesome situation for a young quarterback or a potential veteran to be traded into, signed into, whatever the case may be. For the Seattle Seahawks, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the same pick from my last video. Sauce Gardner feels like a perfect scheme fit for that defense, and they got to add some talent. You lose DJ Reed. This is a way to try to recoup that loss and maybe even get a little bit more out of it. I'm going to go Drake London still here at 10. He's just a body type the Jets don't have right now, so obviously a big need there, and this is the year to find out if Zach Wilson's it. Don't wait and linger and find yourself where the Giants are. Don't find yourself where the Dolphins are right now, where you're trying to make yourself a believer. Find out this year if Wilson is your guy. Awesome steal here, Kyle Hamilton to 11 at Washington. That's kind of the perks of where the Commanders are at. I'm not crazy about the Carson Wentz move, but it took that need off the board in this spot and allows them to get a guy who solid combine, but just wasn't overly impressive given how much you see him do on the field. Because of that, he'll slip a little bit. Additionally, he's a safety, low position value. And then Washington gets a guy who is exactly what they need defensively. So, solid value there. And I could see 10 and 11 being picked or switched. I said that Friday. Maybe the Jets want to invest and get an all-around safety. I could see that. And if that's the case, Drake London makes a ton of sense for Washington at 11. And then this is going to be a little different as well. Danielle Hunter has been paid, got that bonus, and reportedly, the Vikings are going to hold on to him for the next 2 years of that deal. So I think that is a smart move. He's a player worth being paid. He makes a lot of money, but he's still 26, turning 27 this year, and he's when he's on the field, one of the best edge rushers in football. Go get a Travon Walker. Pair him up next to him, or it's gonna be a lot more 3-4. Reportedly with this defense, but it is gonna be scheme versatile. And Walker gives you skill set where he could play 3-4 D end. He could play 3-4 D end. You might be able to stand him up and have it be an edge rusher on the opposite side of Danielle Hunter as an outside linebacker. So gives you a lot to work with there. And if you're gonna move your defense around, I think Walker's a guy you can move around, and especially if you like DJ Wonnum, Walker could be a guy you take, get some extra pass rush, but still keep Wonnum on the field. And then we get to the most interesting pick. I don't know what to do here. I was thinking edge rusher, like, David Ojabo tore his ACL at his pro day. That's tough, but he's not going to miss a whole lot of his rookie season just based off where sports science is at. Maybe that. Jermaine Johnson, if he was still on the board, that'd be intriguing. But Caserio coming from this New England tree, I don't think that's going to be the blueprint for everything. But New England's like these man press corners. Derek Stingley Jr. is scheme versatile, which is also a plus because Lovie Smith probably is not the long-term DC or play caller on that side of the football. So it's probably a lot of Tampa 2 to start. Who knows what it'll be in the years to come, but because Derek Stingley, at his best, can be awesome in man, awesome in zone, this feels like a really nice pick, not only to improve this team this year in that category, but also to have a potential CB1 of the future. I know Texans fans are probably not going to be in love with this pick, but I don't even think the tape was necessarily all that bad the last 2 years. It was a step down from 2019, and there are some maybe effort concerns, and that would probably carry over to a team that is not likely to do a whole lot this year. But I think the narrative has gotten to the point where Derek Stingley Jr. has enough to prove now to where I'm really excited to see his rookie season. And if he can kind of silence some of the negative criticisms he's gotten, and if he does, I mean, this is a CB1 in the making. So I think this is a worthy spot. And if you were to tell me a year ago Derek Stingley Jr. is available for the Houston Texans to take at 13, I tell you to do it in a heartbeat. So why change that point? Then we get back to the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to stick with Jordan Davis, what I did on Friday. They could use edge, especially after the Za'Darius Smith deal falls through, but they're also missing a lot of size on the inside. No Brandon Williams, no Calais Campbell. Let's help fix that. This is a team that's, all about, that toughness. They do a lot of things right, but they have a way of making you just scared of the Baltimore Ravens way, and Jordan Davis is a menacing human being to look at, so it feels like kind of fits with the culture and just how Baltimore runs things on the defensive side. I'm kind of rambling, it doesn't really make sense. Emotional side of it more than anything else. Then I'm going to stick with Trent McDuffie here. Actually, I had Derek Stingley Jr. here on Friday's video, but Trent McDuffie, I think he's a tremendous scheme fit. Lots of too high zone coverage for Jonathan Gannon, the DC, and I think Trent McDuffie opposite of Darius Slay, that could be a really awesome cornerback duo. And then here at 16, this might be a little early for Devin Lloyd, which, early on in this process, maybe a couple months ago, I'd say, no, this is a great fit. Lloyd is starting to lose some of his steam and allure as, the linebacker class shapes up to be really, really solid. And it begs the question, okay, well, why take one in round one when I can get a player who's also really, really solid in round two? But I think the reason I'm going to do it here is maybe the Eagles could be eyeing, the Chargers, the team at 17, they could also be looking for an inside linebacker, because right now it's because you're white. They still have Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquill. Not a whole lot of great options there. So I could see the Chargers eyeing inside linebacker. Maybe here in this spot, the Eagles try to get ahead of them. And that forces maybe LA to change their plan. And I love Jameson Williams here at 17, but I do want to do something different. I'm sure Chargers fans are ready for a different talking point. Let's go Trevor Penning. This could be potential right tackle of future, and it's back-to-back years taking a tackle in the first round. I know that's not necessarily the sexiest way of doing it, but they're also positions that you have to pay a lot of money to. In a couple of years' time, you're going to have to pay Herbert. So getting a guy like Rashawn Slater and Trevor Penning and trying to maximize their cheap contract, especially as you get to the back half of the Slater and Penning, rookie contracts. Herbert's going to make a lot of money. I think this is a worthy pick here. Williams, Penning, I think it makes a lot of sense. And plus, you go Trevor Penning here at 17, it really does solidify that offensive line. You feel really, really good about what Herbert's working with. And then to finish this point off, I think Robbie Anderson might be on the move. There have been some rumors about that. We'll see. Depends on what quarterback ultimately Carolina ends up with. But that's a downfield, big play waiting to happen type of wide receiver. Will Fuller still out there? That's an intriguing option if they want a speed demon like a Jameson Williams. So there's still some other potential options. And, they don't have a second round pick, but maybe in the third, Khalil Shakir is still there. So I think there's still some options for the Chargers to be able to work with and try to get that speedster that I've been looking to add to that offense. And then we get to the New Orleans Saints. And, hey, well, Jameson Williams on the board here. And, I am assuming Jameis Winston's going to be the guy under center for New Orleans. And, Jameis did take a step forward last year, at least statistically speaking. And I think, a lot of people's opinions, he kind of won over a little bit more fans last year before the injury. And, you miss out on Deshaun Watson, but you could probably turn Jameis Winston into that Ryan Tannehill 16 to 12 range type of quarterback, middle of the pack, maybe not elite, maybe not what you would hope for out of the number 1 overall pick, but a solid starter with Michael Thomas on the outside and then Jameson Williams opposite, and Marquez Callaway there in the slot doing a lot of everything. Interesting. I think that it's something I at least want to see, right? So maybe that's where this is coming from, but Jameson Williams, Michael Thomas with Jameis Winston, sign me up for that. I don't know what that would force Winston into. Maybe he becomes overly aggressive once more with the burner like Williams. I think New Orleans might have been able to way to kind of rein him in. And I think that offense could be really, really scary. Maybe not as good as they would have been with Deshaun Watson, but they might be able to get top 16 to 12 quarterback play out of Winston, like I said. Then we get back to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know Treylon Burks has been falling on a lot of people's boards. The combine was fine if you were to just take it on a clean slate, numbers on a piece of paper. It's just that he had hyped up his hands. The 40 time was, getting boosted up. And then it was just kind of like what you would maybe have expected from a guy that size. That's no reason not to take him here at 19, especially considering Jalen Hurts. I think he's taken step forwards as a passer, but still not a pinpoint accurate passer. And this is just a body type. Same thing I talked about with Drake London to the Jets or Washington football, or the Washington Commanders. I beg your pardon. Sorry, Washington fans. At 10 and 11, just a different body type. A guy who can win in the red zone, can go high point the football. That's what Philadelphia is still missing in that wide receiver room. So I think Treylon Burks here at 19, also a position of high value, makes some sense. Then we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I said, I've pretty open about it on this channel. They're going to trade up, in my opinion, at least where I stand right now. I think they want Malik Willis. But since I'm not doing trades here, go with the next highest upside of my eyes. Sam Howell falls to your lap at 20. Howell feels like he might be on the fringe of round 1, round 2. I've seen a handful of situations where he falls to, obviously this pick is not really on the board anymore, but Cleveland in round 2. I've seen the Giants in round 2. Those are both interesting. Still think Howell's a round 1 talent, especially when you consider his upside. So I'll have him go in here to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. Apologies, made that pick. My webcam died there, but I'm going to go Andrew Booth Jr. here, still at 21 for New England. Scheme versatile guy. If they want to run more man, he fits that. If they want to transition more to a zone-heavy defense, he fits that as well. But obviously losing J.C. Jackson and Jalen Miller's your number 1 guy, you've got to try to invest in the first round at wide receiver or sign somebody in free agency, and the Patriots don't really seem like they want to do a whole lot of that. Green Bay Packers, first pick of the first round, and I think you're going to continue to see a whole lot of this, not only for me, but a lot of other people. Olave gets you that downfield burner, and I just want to see the type of bombs Aaron Rodgers can throw to Chris Olave. I think that could be a really explosive, type of combination, and we're not done with wide receiver with Green Bay just yet. This is the same pick I had for Arizona last video. Ajabo, like I said, tore his ACL at his pro day. Talked about that a little bit in the last video, but I still think, maybe 6-month turnaround, 6 to 8 months, there's a good chance you get him on the field pretty early on next season. I'll have to double check the calendar and see what lines up there. But if not, there's also a team that's been prone to second half collapses, specifically in the offense. So Ojabo doesn't really have a hand in that pot, but could be a guy who gives you a little bit of a boost defensively and helps you stabilize and maintain a high level of play, because even the defense last year started out as one of the best units in football and then, stayed pretty good, but wasn't quite as dominant down the stretch. And Ojabo might help stabilize that throughout the rest of the year. Also a huge position to need, obviously, losing Chandler Jones. Now we're going to have a really weird run on a position group, and it's not something I would have anticipated and probably doesn't happen, right? But Tyler Linderbaum, this could also be Zion Johnson, which takes me to my next point. Zion Johnson for the Buffalo Bills. And while we're here, let's go Kenyon Green to the Tennessee Titans. I'll kind of run through these and shotgun bullet spraying style. But Linderbaum gives you, without a doubt in my eyes, an upgrade over Tyler Biadasz. So I don't know which one maybe has a better opportunity to play good football at guard, but Biadasz I guess he's fine. You can get away with mediocre center play, but Linderbaum's an upgrade there, but also he could be your left guard and Connor Williams' replacement. So I think that makes some sense. That could also be Zion Johnson, which then takes me to the Buffalo Bills. I think Zion Johnson is your right guard of the future. You had to move on from Darrell Williams. I think Zion Johnson, plug and play option there. And then Kenyon Green, he can play one of two positions. That's why I really like this fit. Also, Tennessee makes the trade to get Robert Woods, so I'd love to go wide receiver here. They could use a third guy because, in all reality, Westbrook Akina is not all that great. He's fine. You might be able to get away with him as your number 3 wide receiver in a run-heavy offense. You could still get better there, though. But whether you want to, it depends on what they want to do with Dylan Radunz, basically, is where I'm going here. If they want to play Radunz at left guard, cool. Kenyon Green has good tape and has shown he can play right tackle. Offensive line solidified and a run-heavy offense, that's huge. Or it could be the other way around. Dylan Radunz, hey, we drafted in the second round. We want you to play tackle. You're going to play on the right side. Then you feel totally comfortable with Kenyon Green playing left guard. So options in place there for Tennessee. Not often you see a run on interior offensive linemen because they're not all that valuable in the eyes of most, but that's just kind of how the board played out here. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm probably going to see a whole lot of this from me. Devontae Wyatt might go before 27, but this is a perfect 3-tech replacement for Ndamukong Suh, and it gives you that guy who can give you some extra pass rush. Wyatt's also good against the run, but Wyatt next to Vita Vea and where their strengths are at is such a nice combo to have there in the middle for Tampa Bay. And plus that interior pressure might help, where the pass rush got a little quiet, and maybe it helps Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Shaq Barrett, get back to the numbers, not necessarily Tryon-Shoyinka because last year was his rookie year, but, get that pass rush as a unit back up to where it was the year they won the Super Bowl. Back to the Green Bay Packers, and Christian Watson. This is the same wide receiver duo I had in the other video, but Chris Olave, downfield guy, but he also wins, at the line of scrimmage, can do some stuff after the catch, and he's a smooth route runner, so you can work him all over the field, but think of him as a downfield vertical option. And then Christian Watson, very similar skill set, but at 6'4", this just feels like the vertical go ball offense I want to see with a dude with a rocket for an arm and who's won back-to-back MVP. So I might be a little biased in what I'm trying to do, and maybe these two wide receivers have too much skill set overlap, and really they need someone like a Jahan Dotson who has downfield speed but works a lot in that 10 to 19 yard range. I'm just ready to see vertical. I'm ready to see deep nines all day, all year for Green Bay, I guess. But Olave, Watson with Rodgers, I think that's a nice way to get back on track. Also, are they going to bring back MVS? That's obviously something we have to consider here. Jarvis Landry, maybe. So we'll have to wait and see what they ultimately do with the rest of free agency. But while I can say it, 2 wide receivers in the first round, almost certainly something I would have never said about the Green Bay Packers coming into this year. Then for the Miami Dolphins, this is a pretty chalky pick. Bernard Ryman, they need a tackle. We'll see. They might get in the market for, maybe get in with Lyon Collins, perhaps land a Teron Armstead now that he's not going to, more than likely not going back to New Orleans. Could certainly be playing that would force me to change the pick here. For the Kansas City Chiefs, I really like George Karlaftis this year. They need another edge rusher. They're going to keep Frank Clark, so his cap pick's lower, but I don't know. The play hasn't all been that good. I'd rather see them just bring back Melvin Ingram and then draft George Karlaftis, but Karlaftis feels like a good fit in that 4-man, base 4-3 type of defense. So I think he gives you something you're missing right now. And if you're going to keep Frank Clark and not bring back Melvin Ingram, then you desperately need a starter on the other side of the defensive line. Then for the Cincinnati Bengals, a little bit of a different pick here. I'm not necessarily crazy about it. Bengals did re-sign Eli Apple. They haven't cut Trey Waynes yet, which is also interesting. Kyrie Elam, I think of him more as a man press heavy corner. And it was primarily single high, cover 1, cover 3 looks for the Bengals last year in the regular season. But then give a ton of credit to Lou Amaretto, their defensive coordinator, and that defense in general. Against Kansas City, they're running nonstop 3-man rushes and cover 4 behind it. So these players have done a whole lot, and I'm not entirely sure how Elam would fit into a more zone-heavy type of defense. So this may not be a match made in heaven right away, but it also could be a guy where you look at him and say, sub 440, 6'2", and he can press, which feels like a skill set at the corner position. You either can do it or you can't. He's got some of the intangibles you can't teach. We can figure out how to have him be a better player in zone coverage and have him be better in off man or whatever the case may be. So feels like someone that maybe Lou Amaretto can just kind of coach up. And if you're bringing back Trey Waynes, Eli Apple, Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, he might not need to see the field right away. So it's not great, and it's probably not something Bengals fans want to hear me say, draft and stash a first rounder, but it could pay off long term. And then for the Detroit Lions, here's our honorary shot at quarterback. This time around, let's go Des Ridder. And we're on to the second round now, and this is, like I said in my last video, this is kind of where the fun begins for me. I've been seeing a lot of linebackers going here at 33, and it's because of where their defensive coordinator's background comes from, coaching up linebackers, and that totally could be in play. Also, you move on from Miles Jack. Nakobe Dean does feel like a nice compliment if you're going to run a 3-4. You're starting to see teams really focus in. If you run 3-4, have one middle linebacker who could be your zone, you're not even zone coverage, but coverage specialist, one who could be a headhunter and blitzer. Nakobe Dean with Foyesei Oluokun, that's a nice compliment. Dean is your headhunter and your blitzer, and Oluokun as your coverage guy, emulating what, Tampa Bay has, and when they won the Super Bowl, what they had and what people were just enamored by. But that being said, the Rams, didn't really invest in that position group a whole lot. They just won a Super Bowl. So, it's kind of interesting to see the league be a copycat league and maybe all the wrong areas in my eyes, but we'll see. Nakobe Dean, also a fantastic player. I am concerned, didn't test at his pro day. Says he will eventually, but if you're going to do drills and not do the athletic testing, that feels like a red flag on the horizon. Next up, the Detroit Lions, and I love this pick with all my heart. Sky Moore, vertical wide receiver on the outside. You signed DJ Chark. You bring back Josh Reynolds. You even got back Khalif Raymond, who feels like more of a gadgety guy, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just putting out some nice young players to complement Jared Goff, which how often do you hear that? But moving on from that point, it's not really about Goff. It's about who after Goff is the quarterback, and in this case, maybe it's Des Ridder, and putting some nice weapons around him, and not only all good wide receiver, 2 solid wide receivers, 3 above average guys. At that point, Sky Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, I feel confident about that. I like the upside that Amon-Ra St. Brown showed last year, and I really like Sky Moore as a prospect, and Chark has shown flashes. But then you also have a rotational guy in Josh Reynolds, who's at worst league average, and Khalif Raymond, who gives you some skill sets that not every player has, and he's a gadgety type of dude. So I think that's trying to build a nice ecosystem around Des Ridder, see if that works, and if it doesn't, readjusting the quarterback position next draft. This time I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm actually going to go with a guy who I've had falling a little bit later in these drafts, and it's not because I don't like Kyler Gordon, and I know the combine wasn't great, he's a little bit shorter, the arms aren't quite as, pterodactyl in nature as people might have anticipated, but he's still a really fluid moving zone coverage corner who is a solid athlete, and this just feels like another boundary corner you can throw to the mix and maybe allows you to kick a DJ Reed inside. I know you're paying him $11 million, so maybe you'd rather see Bryce Hall be that nickel guy. You also have LaMarcus Joyner coming back who can play that role, but in this day and age, you need multiple cornerbacks, and there's also no guarantee that Bryce Hall is a long-term starting player. I think he's been pretty solid, but also compare him to the players he's been opposite of. Like him compared to Brandon Nichols feels like a pretty decent player because Brandon Nichols, is just not all that great, and that's no disrespect to the man. He's in the NFL, I'm not. So I think adding Kyler Gordon just gives you one more potential starting cornerback option, which obviously pays dividends. Zone-heavy defense feels like a nice fit for Robert Saleh. Then we get to the Giants, and pretty similar to what I had in the last video. I just had it as Nakobe Dean, but Leo Chenal, blitz specialist type of linebacker. That's where a lot of his value comes from, so it feels like a really awesome fit for Wink Martindale. So you get Jermaine Johnson, who can be this edge rusher opposite of Azeez Ojulari, but also drop into coverage, and then you get some pressure from the interior pairing up with Blank Martinez. It's a really solid front seven building the way for Wink Martindale. We'll also see, obviously, no trade for James Bradbury yet. They do decide to move him. I think Sauce Gardner could be in play up at 7, and that makes this pick here at 36 that much more impactful and that much more of a no-brainer to me. And then we get to the Houston Texans again. This is a tough one. So we've gone tackle, we've gone corner. Let's go Boye Mafe, a guy who may well be a first rounder, might not even be on the board here at 37. So if you're a Texans fan, I think you should appreciate this value. High upside athlete. I think he comes with a little bit of scheme versatility, but he definitely fits that 4-man rush that comes with Lovie Smith Tampa too in my eyes. So I think he can play stand up 3-4 outside linebacker if that's the direction they go long term. But Mafe is going to be a bit of a project, but man, if he works out, we're going to be looking back and saying, God, they got him in the top of round 2. How did he not get taken on day 1? So that's the type of risk you take, especially this early on in a rebuild where you're really just now getting started due to the Deshaun Watson trade. Then we get to the Jets once more, and we'll go Chad Muma here. Last video I had Quay Walker, but Chad Muma, probably a little bit more of a Mike. Quay feels like more of a Sam versus Muma being a Mike. We'll see. They do have CJ Mosley still, who makes a lot of money, so this could also free up the opportunity to maybe in a year's time move on from CJ Mosley. But you're just looking for that rangy coverage linebacker that Robert Saleh had with Fred Warner. No guarantee that Muma is as good or near as good as Fred Warner, but it's a player who needs that defense, and since you run so much cover 3 and cover 4, you need guys who can perform in coverage at the linebacker position, and Chad Muma definitely is one of those guys. Then we get to the Bears. I'm going to go Darian Kennard this time around. I talked about it in the last video. Him and Tyler Smith, you can easily switch these 2 picks. This time we'll go Kennard. Let's say he's the left guard replacement for James Daniels. Tyler Smith, potential starting tackle for the Seahawks, especially if they don't get back to Wayne Brown. I like that fit a lot. And then maybe they don't sign a right tackle. I know they had talked to Trent Brown, former Patriot and former Raider. We'll see what comes of that. But Smith, per Draft Network here, they have him as an interior offensive lineman. I think he's got the size to play tackle, so we'll see. But he could also be a guy you kick inside and play guard. And then we get back to the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm going to go Arnold Ebiketie. Athletically speaking, a guy who could flirt with the first round. He could be this year's, Peyton Turner and kind of surprise people and turn some heads, but feels like a really nice fit, wide 9 rusher, adding on to what you have in the pass rush with Darrell Taylor, something that needs to be a priority. Now you look at what Seattle's done. You got in a corner, you got an edge rusher, you got an offensive lineman, you're building that foundation for whatever you want to do moving forward. Then we get to the Indianapolis Colts, and this might not be a pick because this could be with Cleveland, which if this becomes a pick to Cleveland for a Baker Mayfield swap, Cleveland picking at 42 and 44, I will be excited to make that video because I think there's a couple ways they can move forward here. And that's kind of what we'll talk about once we get to pick 44. But this could also be Matt Ryan rumors are still persistent because he has been floated around in trades. Does he even want to go back and play for Atlanta? Who's on the clock next? A lot to figure out here. But in this case, if Jahan Dotson's here, this is your T.Y. Hilton replacement. Dotson can definitely play on the outside. And if he does, that's fantastic. That's great. You can find a different slot player. Dotson just gives you a different skill set, really, compared to what you have with Michael Pittman, who I think should be a part of the wide receiver future for Indianapolis. So getting another playmaker for whoever the quarterback for the Colts is, they might not have this pick, though, which is what makes it a little hard to judge what you would want to do if you're Indianapolis. Because, okay, yeah, go get Baker Mayfield, but if Baker Mayfield's only throwing to Michael Pittman and we can't add a Jahan Dotson in the second round, feels like you're not getting fully what you want out of Baker or Matt Ryan for that matter. And then we get to the Atlanta Falcons, and here I got Matt Corral on the board. At this spot, it feels like you got to take a flyer on one of these guys here at 43 because right now it's Matt Ryan and who else for the future? They could wait for tour in 2023, excuse me. They could go wide receiver here, they could go edge, tackle. There's a lot of different needs on this team, but I think here at 43, the process is sound. Throw a dart. Go with Matt Corral, and I'd be interested to see what he looks like in an Arthur Smith defense. Then we get to the Cleveland Browns. And this is kind of what I was talking about. I'd love to go edge here. I think Cam Thomas might be a little rich for him right here, but fits as that 4-3 D end. Kingsley and Agbury, probably more of a 3-4, but I think you could transition into that 4-3 type. Josh Pascal could certainly be in play, but I'm going to go wide receiver here. And it might be a little rich for John Mechie, but you have Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's a field stretcher, comes with more size, but he also has those drop concerns. Then you have Amari Cooper, who's fantastic, wins just about anywhere on the field. But you see him working as a route runner underneath and in the intermediate areas of the field. Now imagine throwing John Mechie as another speed element into the mix, because Mitchell Schwartz he's got downfield speed, but he's a gadget, yards after the catch type of dude who could give you a big play or two if he gets behind the defense. And Donovan Peoples-Jones definitely has the speed to get behind the defense and force defenses to respect that over-the-top speed. And that'll open up Amari Cooper. But I just think if you add one more guy into that rotation, and maybe it's a George Pickens, maybe it's a David Bell as a possession type, maybe it's a Calvin Austin to get an upgraded Mitchell Schwartz, basically. I think John Mechie, prior to the injury, was right around that late 1, early 2, mid 2 range. Modern sports science, the ACL more than likely not going to be a long-term issue. So add another burner into the mix, and him, Donovan Peoples-Jones, working in rotation, finding ways to get Mitchell Schwartz on the field. They could use a slot guy. Maybe Mechie the third could be that dude. But all that speed forces defense to respect the deep ball, and it makes Amari Cooper's life that much easier. But it also opens up what you can do with Deshaun Watson's legs too. So and the running game just in and of itself. So I think John Mechie is a really interesting fit there at 44. But if the Browns are able to move on from Baker and get that Colts pick at 42 or something thereabout, edge I think would be the other option I would go with here, especially like maybe a Cam Thomas or a Kingsley and Agbury. Getting back to the Baltimore Ravens now, I'm going to stick with linebacker. And, I've been changing up what linebackers have been going where, and that's really just so we can have different names to talk about in these videos. Here we'll go Quay Walker. Basically, I'm switching the Quay Walker and Chad Muma picks from Friday's video. I'm asking you to do the same thing. Be that coverage specialist, sideline to sideline guy. Especially with Baltimore transitioning from that Wink Martindale scheme, where you're not asking your middle linebackers to blitz as much as Wink Martindale might have been. But Patrick Queen's skill set is that. So get a guy who has the different type of skills that we talked about in that 3-4 defense. What you want those inside linebackers. Walker, I think, is that coverage specialist that the Ravens are looking for. Then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. I don't love this pick. I can't lie. I'm sorry, Vikings fans. But you look at the roster, and I was literally staring at our lads for like 5-10 minutes. And you could go best player available, and that's a sound approach. But Tariq Woolen is such an interesting prospect, and he's probably not someone who can play right away, which is kind of counterintuitive when you look at their depth chart and you're figuring out how can we get that position group better. But give Mike Zimmer some credit here. through all of his faults, he has a lot of experience working with corners and DBs in general. You don't quite have that. I'd love to see what Mike Zimmer could potentially do with a guy like Tariq Woolen and try to coach him up because he has the size, awesome athlete. He just needs to become more refined. So it is a project here at 46. I just ultimately didn't know where to go. If you're a Vikings fan, tell me what you think. Who is BPA here at 46? What other position group could you attack? I'd love to have your thoughts. I went corner because I see that as the next biggest position of need, but it just feels like here in the middle of the second is a trade down spot if you're looking for that group because there's just not a lot of great fits for what the Vikings are going to do, but also Woolen could be a fit, but he's just not ready to play right now. So it's one or the other that kind of you run into that issue here in this spot of the draft. For the Washington football team, let's go to the wide receiver room and let's take a shot in the dark with George Pickens. And then, let's stick with wide receiver here. Let's go Jalen Tolbert. Talk about both these real quick. George Pickens is definitely a risk, but he is a big body dude that the Washington Commanders don't have right now. And if I said Washington football team a minute ago, it's because the logo is wrong. I'm convinced. I don't know why I keep doing that. But Pickens gives you a different body type, and I've said this 1,000 times, but he also gives you a lot of downfield speed. So you'd look at Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and George Pickens, and they all win in different ways. Terry McLaurin, I think, wins in all levels, but there's one commonality between all of it. They are all burners. Those dudes can move. So Carson Wentz, forgive his mistakes. Dude does have a solid arm, and he can push down the field. Now, when to take those chances and his decision-making is always kind of part of the problem. But, man, chucking it up down the field and taking, push comes to shove, if he's not all that great, just heaving it up to a Pickens, McLaurin, and trying to scheme up ways for Curtis Samuel to get open down the field. I'm intrigued to see what Scott Turner can do there as the OC. And then for Jalen Tolbert, this is your win-at-the-catch point. Little over 6'1" type of wide receiver they're just missing right now, and you lose Allen Robinson. Not necessarily a one-to-one comparison. I really thought David Bell could do that, but he, his 40 time has really kind of ruined his stock at 4.65. But Tolbert gives you that win-of-the-catch point and just a different wide receiver who wins in a different area of the field. I'd still like to see them add somebody with a little bit more size, someone who can be kind of like a Juju Smith-Schuster for the Kansas City Chiefs and what I think he can do. Win the sticks, find soft spots in the zone, and just ensure that the offense can continue to move the sticks and find first down. So they're still looking for that guy, but I think Tolbert's a worthy addition to the wide receiver room opposite of Darnell Mooney, and you kind of figure out what you want to do with the slot position. Then for the New Orleans Saints, I'm going to go Nicholas Petit-Frere. I didn't get him in the last mock, but assuming they're losing Teron Armstead, Nicholas Petit-Frere could be a plug-and-play left tackle. You could also go Abraham Lucas, but Lucas is, I think he put together good tape and good grades at Washington State, but high athlete. And, once you get to the second round, you're saying, okay, a tackle with good athleticism might be a little bit of a project on the field. Nicholas Petit-Frere is the other, right? Good tape, feels like a plug-and-play, technically sound type of dude. Just doesn't have a whole lot of athleticism to take him to that elite tier and push him into round one. So let's go with Teron Armstead replacement here, Nicholas Petit-Frere, and keeping Jameis Winston upright would certainly go a long way, and it would help him find Jameson Williams, who we took in the first round for the Saints. So I think this is a solid draft here for New Orleans to stay competitive in the NFC South, and potentially work themselves into a wild card spot if all plays out right and Jameis Winston can stay healthy. For the Miami Dolphins, let's go back to linebacker. A few different areas. I did Brian Asamoah last time, and I think that's what I'm going to do again here. But adding another linebacker into the mix and just trying to get that coverage guy to pair up with Jerome Baker. I've talked about it 1,000 times. That 3-4 defense needs someone in coverage. Brian Asamoah, long arms. I think he can be that guy. The Philadelphia Eagles did re-sign Anthony Harris, but they should not stop there. Jaquan Brisker, I think at that point becomes even more of a nice addition, because then I know Brisker, Harris, those guys can play deep coverage together if they're going two high look. But then if they rotate down single high, I feel confident with Jaquan Brisker rotating into the box, and Anthony Harris hasn't been as great as a deep safety the last couple of years, but has had good play at that role. But I think you'll see a whole lot of two high, cover 2, cover 4 looks, and Brisker, Harris, really nice coverage duo there in that respect. Then for the Pittsburgh Steelers at 52, I'm going to go safety here. This is one of the quietest needs, and no disrespect to the Draft Network, there is no shot it is our lowest need that you see here on the screen, because Terrell Edmunds is not coming back, and Terrell Edmunds wasn't all that good in the first place. But Pittsburgh asked Minkah Fitzpatrick to play and do a whole lot of different things last year, and that kind of resulted in him getting torched a little bit more than I think Pittsburgh had become accustomed to, especially its fan base. So adding another safety in the mix, I think, would go a long way. Lewis Sin feels like a guy where if you want to run too high, you can feel confident with Sin and Fitzpatrick being the deep coverage guys. But also, for that matter, Lewis Sin is a awesome downhill playing safety that can make an impact in run game. So if you want to rotate him into the box and have Minkah Fitzpatrick play over the top and let him be a ball hawk over the over the top of the defense, he can do that. You can do the other way around too, and that's really where Minkah Fitzpatrick has been really special. Not this past year, he was fine, did get burned, but in years prior where he was making plays, he was living in the box and just reading quarterbacks' eyes and being that true robber. And with Lewis Sin being your deep safety, you can do that. That's something that Steelers couldn't do with Terrell Edmonds. They couldn't really trust Edmonds as a deep safety in coverage and allow Minkah to just kind of roam around and make plays. So you add Lewis Sin there. I think safety is a way bigger need than what the Draft Network has here, but it also feels like Pittsburgh is just content with rolling with the offensive line they have right now, which is a mistake, but it feels like the mistake they want to make. And they could go corner. They brought back Akello Witherspoon. They signed Levi Wallace. You have Cam Sutton. We'll see. And Antoine Brooks could be that box safety, nickel corner hybrid. So it's kind of feeling like Pittsburgh has made their bet in the cornerback room as well. So we'll see. As the process goes on, we start to hear more about what players are interesting teams and what position they're trying to attack. Right now, I don't know what Pittsburgh wants to do in round 2, and if they'll even have this pick. If they trade for quarterback, they probably won't. But if they do, Lewis Sin, I think, is a really nice addition. It allows you to do a lot of different things with Minkah Fitzpatrick, move him around, and cause a lot of headaches for opposing quarterbacks and offenses in general. Green Bay Packers, I'm going to stick with the same pick I had in my last video. Drake Jackson feels like the third edge rusher that they can develop and work with. It's an important part of that defense. And considering everything that Green Bay had done with Rashawn Gary, I'd love to see what they could tap into with a former high 5-star recruit coming out of high school, went to a high tradition Power 5 school in USC, just never really hit his stride and hit his full potential. Maybe Green Bay can tap into it, and I feel like that's a worthy pick here at 53. For the New England Patriots, I think I had Leo Chenal going here. Christian Harris, I'm asking the same thing. Blitzing linebacker, especially Christian Harris, he feels like a Donta Hightower replacement. So love the ad there. Plus, you got the trade for Mack Wilson, who's a little bit smaller, can move around a little bit more. He could be your coverage guy. You blitz and use Harris as that type of addition to the pass rush. For the Arizona Cardinals, this is another cornerback pick I'm not necessarily in love with. So I thought about Roger McCreary here. Ultimately, I decided to go interior offensive line. I went Dylan Parham, which even that, a lot of people are saying he's going to be a center. I think he's big enough to move out to guard. I need to throw on a little bit more weight, but I think this could be your potential right guard of the future or a potential Rodney Hudson replacement because he's getting older, he's battling injuries, his play is slowly, but continuously regressing. So Parham gives you some option both now and also long term. Next up, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go Daxton Hill. This feels like a Cowboys pick in waiting to happen. I don't know really why. It's another emotional aspect to it, but they do need safety. Right now, Malik Hooker is the only guy that I would feel comfortable with starting, and Hooker, more often than not available for 17 games. He comes with his own flaws as well. Daxton Hill kind of gives you that curse replacement where you can bring him down to the line of scrimmage, you can blitz him, you can leave him out as a nickel corner, get some man-to-man coverage out of him, and he's good in zone. So Hill gives you a lot you can use as safety for, and you can move him around a ton. So it'd be interesting to see how Dan Quinn uses him, considering Dan Quinn and how much he has improved as defensive coordinator and embracing what you can do differently about Micah Parsons. I'd love to see what he could do with Daxton Hill and how he can move him around and make him a true bishop on a chessboard, or even a queen for that matter, if he really taps into what Daxton Hill's skill set is. Next up, the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to stick with Calvin Austin as the pick here. This is your Cole Beasley replacement, playing in the slot and gives you even more speed than Beasley had. But Austin on top of the speed, awesome agility numbers, and just this guy can run the twist like no other, and I'd love to see him work that that zig route underneath with Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis working the vertical tree. Austin's your safe underneath route, plus the running backs they have, and that running back room that all are pretty solid pass catchers. So this feels like a really nice, safe underneath option, and since you moved on Beasley, slot wide receiver is a need. Getting back to the Atlanta Falcons. Let's go back to the edge group. Kingsley Enagbare, this feels like really solid value here. Guy that I really like, has the size and the strength and the arms to be an edge rusher. Just need to add some moves. Now, granted, Atlanta doesn't have a great track record of developing project edge rushers, but maybe Enagbare is the one that they figure out and they find their stride there. And then we get back to the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go Travis Jones here. I think you play him at nose. You move Kenny Clark to a 3-tech spot, 3-4 D end, and you allow him to focus on the passer. And now you look at this Green Bay draft. First round wide receivers, you added an edge rusher, you added a nose, that can plug the middle and stop the run. That allows Kenny Clark to focus on pass rush. So 2 wide receivers, and then you're allowing with 2 moves more pass rush focus, and you're adding a rotational guy, but also allowing Kenny Clark as he gets older to make that his primary role on the team. I think that's one way to get, back into the top of the NFC conversation and potentially make a push for the Super Bowl. Because right now, the NFC, it's open, right? It's the Rams, the Bucks, the Packers, and we're kind of waiting to see what San Francisco's going to do with Jimmy G. What does Trey Lance look like? They're obviously alive and well in that conversation as well. Dallas, I like the James Washington move as well. I didn't talk about that at pick 56, but I really do like that move, and I wish Pittsburgh had held on to him because now wide receiver is kind of a sneaky need. But the NFC is more open. So I think if there was a time for Green Bay to make this trade, as the AFC is overloading, the NFC becomes more open. This is, it's rare to do this, but this could be a time where you turn a player into, picks, and then if you hit on all those picks, you ultimately become a better squad. Now, that is a low percentage chance because Devontae Adams is unbelievable to have on your team. I think the Raiders are going to be psyched to have him, and Derek Carr is going to be pumped. But that being said, if both wide receivers hit, Drake Jackson becomes an impactful rotation guy, Travis Jones does his role, and Kenny Clark becomes that much better of a pass rusher, this team could be maybe more well-rounded as a full squad compared to what they had with the regular 2 picks, one in the first, one in the second, and Devontae Adams. I don't know. Open for a conversation about that. Getting back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now, I'm going to go Roger McCreary here, and this is, it could be a nice scheme fit, but also it feels like insurance. Since you paid Carlton Davis, it's going to be tough to keep Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy bunting around. So I think Roger McCreary, smaller arms, a lot of people are saying he's probably going to have to play in the slot. If you move on from Sean Murphy bunting or Jamel Dean, this is your guy to plug in for one of those 2 guys in that slot corner role. San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to go with the different interior offensive linemen. I'm just trying to get different names out there, but Cole Strange is garnering a lot of momentum right now. Back of round 2 feels like probably his ceiling right now, but compared to, Jamari Saleh, who's more of a power blocking scheme fit, Sean Ryan, guard tackle flexibility, but more of a power blocking scheme, Cole Strange feels like the guy who could fit that zone blocking look that the Shanahans have, always been associated with. So Strange, potential center of the future, but also a good guy who might be able to play guard right away. Obviously coming from a smaller school, and that's kind of the concern. So you'll have to wait and see. This might just be a project, draft and stash type of dude that eventually becomes a starter, but there's a chance that he could be an impact player right away. Back to Kansas City Chiefs, I'm really loving this fit. Jalen Petrie, have him be your, as much as you can, Tyrann Mathieu replacement. And you play Justin Reed, who you just signed for north of $10 million. Be that free safety, right? And part of the reason I like that is because one of the ways you can justify big contracts with interceptions, right? Not everybody's looking at, Pro Football Focus grades. Not everybody's watching every snap and analyzing it in their own mind. They might just look at, interceptions and pass breakups and, tackles and things like that and say, that guy's good, that guy's bad. And, not everybody has time to, get into the weeds of it. If you play Justin Reed, that deep safety, he comes away with 5 picks next year, 5, 6 picks or something like that, which would be pretty great for a safety. People are going to be like, oh, yeah, that was an awesome signing. Wow. Wow, they didn't pay Tyrann Mathieu, got cheap for the position, and got Justin Reed. What a stellar move. Great foresight from the Chiefs organization. And then Jalen Petrie rotates into that nickel corner, blitzing, box safety type of role, and also drafting a safety helps you ensure that Dan Sorensen does not see the field, which is always a good thing if you are a Chiefs fan. Then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals, and I talked about Sean Ryan just a moment ago. Part of the reason I'm doing that, I don't love the power blocking scheme. I don't necessarily know if that's what the Bengals want to do. They're reshaping a lot of the offensive line, so that's kind of up in the air. I don't know what they want to stick with or if they want to change anything. But Ryan, part of the appeal here is guard tackle flexibility. So barring an injury, you have a guy who you can feel confident, plugging in for a game or 2 at right tackle, at either guard spot, things of that nature. So the versatility across the offensive line is what drew me to make this pick for the Bengals. And then before I give you the final pick with the Denver Broncos, here are some of the holdovers. I did it again. I cannot believe I did not have Kenny Pickett. My bias against Pickett is shining like no other right now. But, Kenny Walker, I think, is the guy who can go in the top 5 picks of round 3, DeMarvin Leal. And we're starting to get to the point where I'm getting a better and better grip on who those day 2 guys are going to end up being. So be on the lookout. 3-round mocks are not too far away. But now for this final pick, it's going to be the same that I had on Friday. Abraham Lucas. It feels like Denver does like these athletic tackles, and it feels like Lucas might not be ready to start at left tackle since he is a little bit of a project and you're associating him more with his athleticism. Maybe right tackle's a little easier. Granted, in this day and age, you're going to see talented edge rushers on both sides, and really good defenses are moving edge rushers around. So it's not like solidifying left tackle, you have to be good at this, right tackle, you have to be good at that. You're looking for well-rounded players on both sides, but let's go with the project and Abraham Lucas. I'll give you one more look at the 64 picks I made in this video. Tell me what you think down in the comments section. Who do I have going too high? Who do I have falling too low? Who's your favorite team? Did you like the picks I gave them? Did you not like it? Tell me why that you did or you did not. I'd love to have that conversation with you down in the comment section, and maybe I'll take it into effect for my next mock draft if I think you're making sense. But that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and if you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.